Hello and welcome to Crimes, Lies, and Alibis. I am Nicole, and this content is for seeking justice for victims, educational purposes, and it comes with adult content only. Viewer discretion is advised. Super sensitive information, documents, and conversations will happen as a result of these videos, especially ones involving Maddie Soto and Stephan Stearns. Stephan Stearns, if you are not aware somehow, is the man in orange. He is supposed to be, okay, so he has two hearings. One is slated for May 5th. He's desperately trying to get that one delayed because that one is for the CCM, which what is child abuse materials. That one is separate from Maddie's murder trial. And that was one of the only things that his defense has won. The judge did agree to make it two trials because they did not want his first trial, or the CCM, to be a contributing factor for them to give him murder one, because that comes with a death penalty conviction. So by separating the two, they're giving him the most fair trial that he can get without having a tainted jury. And it's immediately tainting because you can't really help what jurors see, especially since they're from the area. But not all of them follow social media, and for some cases it didn't matter. I mean, granted, there wasn't social media then, really, but Casey Anthony is probably one of the most famous trials of people hating her. Like, she was overwhelmingly disliked by the public. Overwhelmingly so. And yet, she still had her days in court, and she was found not guilty. So, it happens. He could, for some reason, people, might think, oh, okay, well, maybe not guilty. I don't know how he's guilty as sin. He's so guilty, he probably should have taken a plea deal, but they probably didn't like any of the plea deals because they want him gone. They want to make a statement with this guy. And they want to make a statement because he is a massive predator who grossly victimized a young girl, Madeline Soto, and he deserves the harshest of punishments for that. And I don't know, if I were prosecution, I don't know that I'd be willing to work out a deal with this guy. They want him to have the death penalty. It's sick. It is sick what he's done to this girl. So this hearing right there was yesterday, trying to get a delay, which I don't know if it happens here, so let's watch some of this. I guess I should say they've tried, this is the motion to suppress. They've been trying really hard to suppress the evidence from his phone and Google because their argument is that they did not have proper authority. They didn't have a search warrant to go through his phone. He literally handed it to the officers. They asked for it. He handed it. Now, in one portion, the officer asks if she can check his settings. He consents. People argue that he only consented to her checking his settings, not the entire phone. But when you hand a phone over to law enforcement, and that is automatically a substantiated consent. Like, that's already, you handed them your device. Whether you're guilty or not, you are not required at all, for any reason, to give law enforcement anything like that without a warrant. You don't. Because your phone has banking information, it has your medical records. Your phone, even if you're not doing anything nefarious, your phone is essentially your life. My phone has You can access my email, which by accessing my email, you can see my taxes for the last at least 6 years. You can see my banking information, who I bank with. You can actually see through those apps what my banking numbers are, my routing numbers. Like, when you talk about what sensitive information is in phones, people don't realize how sensitive these phones are. And you don't have to give that up without a warrant, because you can hope that law enforcement isn't going to do anything bad or wrong with your stuff. But it isn't even a matter of being incriminating, potentially incriminating evidence. It's just, that's your life. And he willingly handed his phone over. Jen even did the same thing. She's like, I've got nothing to hide. Here is my phone. And the second you transfer that, whatever, it wasn't an unlawful seizure. He handed it to him. Okay? And part of it was he thought he was fine because he, quote, accidentally factory reset it the day that he abandoned Maddie in the wilderness of Florida. I didn't even realize there was wilderness close to Orlando, but close enough to wilderness that, she wasn't seen for several days. And the only reason they found her was because of where he got his flat tire. I feel like that was her way of telling on him, hey, I'm over here, But he thought he was okay. He thought, oh, they can go through my phone. They're not going to find anything. And you can hear that officer take a pause because she said, can I look at your settings here? And he was like, it's fine. And while she was looking at his settings, something popped up that she wasn't supposed to see. But see, he had reconnected to his Google. So yes, he factory reset his phone, but like, I don't know much about Android as an operating system because I haven't had anything but iPhone since I got the iPhone 4. So I don't know anything about the Android operating system. But I know with Apple, as soon as you log into your cloud, even if you change devices and get a new device and you log into your cloud, you get everything back that's attached to that cloud. So I'm assuming Google is probably the same, or Androids are probably the same way. But as soon as he logged into that Google account, it brought everything back to that phone. So wiping it or not, all that might have done is gotten rid of some photos that were not. But I mean, I don't know if it's automatically. I don't know if you have to put photos into that Google account. I think you do, because I believe I have a Google photo, whatever. I just don't really use it because, you have to pay more money to have more space. So I think you do have to upload those and it's not automatic, but it was enough for them to be like, well, what do we have here? She asked if she could keep the phone. Again, getting his consent. The only thing he worried about was, excuse me, whether or not his dad could get in contact with him. And she assured him that she would make sure that he was able to make contact with his dad. But at that point, the second he told her he could keep the phone, it's in her possession. It is now in law enforcement's possession. He was asked again about the phone. Again, there was permission given. People argue, oh, he was tired. It was after being questioned and not getting a good night's sleep. So, how many more times do you want consent from this guy? But it's such a damning piece of evidence that they want it so badly stricken and removed from the ability for the jury to see it. But I kind of touched on this last night in my other video, and I did. That really doesn't matter. I don't see the judge agreeing to set the phone or get the phone out. I feel like it's going to be admitted. But the other thing that Stephan did that was really, really stupid. This guy is dumb as hell. He's dumb. He had an external drive for a computer or a laptop or whatever. He had an external drive that he drove the hour and a half. So they're at a hotel. He has to know they're being watched, potentially. You know, Maddie's missing. They're removed from the house. Jen even supposedly tells him in the car, they're looking at you, they're looking at you. Her quote, they've got the wrong guy, BS. So they go to a hotel. Jen's asleep, allegedly. He takes off in her car. Like, bro, they already have their eyes on you. Takes off in her car, drives down to Northport, which is like an hour and a half drive, get plus or minus, but it's a crazy time of morning, so nobody's out. Well, I mean, there's going to be people out, but like it's going to be next to no one because it's 4 something in the morning. He drives down to Northport, which is south of Tampa, along the Gulf. I think it's close to Sarasota. And he takes this this external drive and stashes it in his parents' storage unit. Well, now that is a transfer of possession. Okay? When you hear phrases like possession is 9/10 of the law, when he did that, it went from being his property to also property of his parents, because his dad is who has the name on the storage unit, not Stephan. If it was Stephan's storage unit and officers just went into his storage unit without consent, then that external drive would not be admissible. But because he put it in his father's storage unit, his father, knowing exactly what's in that unit, finds what Stephan stashed in there, handed it to police. So there's a transfer, a willing transfer of property that went from Stephan to his father, from his father to law enforcement. He's screwed there. And on that external drive, they found over 35,000 photos. Now, some of them are probably duplicates, but it doesn't really matter. They found 35,000 photos stemming from around when Maddie was about 8 years old, maybe a little younger. Well, he moved in with her and Jen when Maddie was around 7, like almost 8. So that time frame tracks from about the time he moved in with them. And even if they were to win and get the phone taken out, they still have that external drive. And I'd love to see how they're going to argue that, because there was a transfer of possession. He put that in his parents' storage unit, which didn't belong to him. There was no warrant needed because they didn't go into his dad's storage unit, even with permission. His dad just handed it to him. This is what he put in my unit. This is what he stored in my property. And at that point, it was his dad's property. So, here we go.
We're on the record, State of Florida versus Stephen Michael Stearns, 2024 CF 632. Appearances for the record, please.
Danielle Pinnell and William J. for the state.
Alicia Smith and Alex Johnson on behalf of Mrs. Stephan Stearns.
Thank you. All right, the court has set this hearing on the defense's motion to continue the suppression hearing, which is currently set for tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Defense, do you wish to present argument with respect to your motion?
Yes, Judge, and defense has case law provided a copy to the state already. You want me to give you a moment to read, Judge, or you want me to stand?
Just a moment. These highlight the McKay factors.
Essentially, Judge, they all essentially stand for the
I'm
same problem.
familiar with the McKay factors. Thank you.
And the cases that I provided to the court are Botham v. State, 272 Southern 3rd 876, a 50 CA case from 2019, Turner v. State, 311 Southern 3rd 185, a second DCA case from 2020, McKay versus State, first DCA, 504 Southern 2nd 1280 from 1986, and unpublished opinion that only has a Westlaw site so far, Surratt versus State, 2025 Westlaw 1119091 from last week from April of 2025. Trocola versus State, 867 Southern 2nd 129 50 CA from 2004, and Singer versus State, 286 Southern 3rd 343 a 50 CA from 2019. Essentially, Judge, defense is moving to continue the motion to suppress the set for the afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. And looking at the Bofo case, it essentially says that in moving for a continuance, defense just has to show that we haven't had a reasonable time to investigate or litigate the case, and that is balanced against the judicial economy and judicial efficiency in the court managing their documents, turning to the McKay factors, as well as the factors that are listed in, I believe, Turner, that looks to a defense suffering an injustice by failing to grant the continuance, as well as if the delay was attributable to the defense or if it was unforeseen. Defense would argue that the intention is not to delay the court, isn't to be derelict in our duties. Defense is moving for this continuance based off of, as the court is aware, there is the second case, and preparing for the motion, as well as in preparing the other case for trial. Defense is coming to information that at this time the defense isn't in a position to be able to divulge to the court or in open court.
So your good cause is secret?
Essentially, Judge. Well, I can't in good faith at this time, being that it's still being explored. I don't know which way it's going to go, if it's going to be something that's going to pan out in favor of defense or be able to be something to be utilized in this case. As the court is aware, a death notice has been filed in the second case, and while I'm not arguing specifically as to that case, in that death notice, this case is used as one of the aggravating factors. So a conviction on this case would be one of the aggravating factors the state would potentially be seeking in the death notice in terms of the homicide case. Defense would argue that this information has come to light recently, and we're still in the process of working through it and figuring out if it's something that would or wouldn't be available in this case. If the defense were to go forward with the motion to suppress at this point, potentially would be relitigated depending on the court's ruling on that. In terms of just regular pretrial in the case, we would be moving to continue the regular pretrial even aside from the motion to suppress hearing, because we did an evidence viewing. We weren't able to complete the evidence viewing, and the second part of that evidence viewing is scheduled for June 11th with the state in this case. So defense essentially is moving to continue balancing the Botham factors as well as the McKay factors. Defense believes that this isn't a
She talks very
unreasonable request
fast.
on the court, and filing the motion and getting this set for a hearing, and still doing their due diligence in terms of preparing the case otherwise for trial and for the motion to suppress in and of itself.
All right. So the McKay factors, so we're on the same page, deal with a request to continue the trial. The other factors that you mentioned deal with a request to continue either a trial or a substantive hearing for absence of a critical witness.
Spring is vastly approaching, and spring is the perfect time to do a fresh declutter, clear out the junk, clear out.
State response?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state has not been in receipt of any witness list or any defense discovery in this case. The defendant in this case was arrested on February 29th of 2024. The public defender's office was appointed the next day at initial appearances. The discovery process started after the information was filed on March 11th of 2024. The state responded to the defense's demand for discovery on March 20th, 2024, and discovery has been ongoing. The motions to suppress that are currently set for hearing tomorrow were filed by the defense on February 6th of 2025. There was a motion to close the courtroom on February 28th of 2025. Notice of hearing for the closure of the courtroom was filed February 24th of 2025. Upon the denial of the defense's motion to close the courtroom on March 27th of 2025, the defense filed a notice of hearing for these motions to suppress. So these have been pending hearing since March 27th of 2025. The defense filed the motions to continue. The defense waited approximately almost 2 months, a little 2.5 months to request hearing time. The hearing has been set. The state filed responses to the defendant's motions to suppress on April 8th of 2025. And then I was contacted by defense. We had a discussion about their request to continue these hearings on April 10th, and a written motion to continue was filed on April 14th of 2025. The written motion filed by defense, the state's position is vague. It is unclear whether this information is necessary for a defense, is necessary for the hearing. The motion simply states that it may affect the presentation of evidence. The state has subpoenaed witnesses. We have a significant amount of hearing time scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. The state's prepared to proceed on the motions and is objecting to the motion to continue the suppression hearings.
Thank you. Any additional argument from the defense?
Yes, Judge. Defense would say that this is necessary for the defense, even if the court were to ask ex parte in terms of, to have ex parte hearing in terms of the basis for the motion. I don't believe at this point defense will be able to disclose that information even to the court, even if an ex parte hearing were requested and or granted. It's defense's position that this information is necessary to be explored in terms of, the presentation of the evidence or presentation of the case, because it's defense's position that at this time the information is confidential, which is why a witness list hasn't been disclosed, discovery exhibits haven't been disclosed in regards to it, because it's still being looked to and explored. As the state indicated, discovery is ongoing, and as discovery has continued to be ongoing, so has defense's preparation of the case, reviewing of the motions, filing of the motions, preparation of the motion, as well as in preparing this case otherwise for trial alongside the homicide case. So it's defense's position that the granting of the continuance in this case would not be an undue burden on the court. I understand the state having subpoenaed witnesses. The day that I found out about the information was the same day we actually happened to have depositions, so I spoke with the state in person about it, and then sent her an email in regards to her position, and then from there filed the motion to continue, and then we got hearing times while I was in trial with Your Honor as another case, and I filed the notice of hearing as to that. Defense has been preparing, defense is preparing, and it's defense's position that denial of the motion to continue in this case would be an abuse of discretion, and we'd be asking the court to grant the request to continue.
Thanks. Well, the court's in a difficult position evaluating the McKay factors. In this case, the court's going to find that there's been significant time to prepare for these hearings. This case initiated in February of 2024. Motion was filed almost a year later. The matter was set for a hearing in March. 13 months. I'll note that this is on 24 CF 632. While the two cases are related, this does not deal with the homicide case. The court has an inability to make a determination as to the likelihood of prejudice from the denial. The defense apparently is in possession of some information, the nature of that information, the timing of when it was received, whether the defendant played any role in shortening the preparation time. The availability of that discovery is unknown to the court because the defense is unwilling at this point to share any information with the court, even on an ex parte basis, as to this information. Counsel that has been appointed to this case has the requisite skill and experience to try this type of case. Both are either board certified criminal trial experts or in the process of becoming are being certified as a criminal trial expert. court cannot, from the information presented, make a finding of good cause, and while the defense argues it will be prejudicial, there's been nothing advanced to the court to support that argument. So the defense's motion to continue the motion to suppress tomorrow, scheduled for 2 p.m., is denied. And
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt him. So there is a hearing today at 2 p.m. I'm hoping that will be televised. It's supposed to take about 3 hours. I plan to be here for that and live as long as it's televised. I guess I should let him talk. He's almost done. I'm sorry.
I'll ask the state to please have their witnesses present and ready to go.
No problem.
Thank you. Matter set for 3 hours tomorrow at 2 p.m. That will conclude our hearing.
Okay, he said that. So 3 hours. Could take up to 3 hours tomorrow at 2 p.m. So, again, I'll be here this afternoon. I was covering the Karen Reed trial. I might cover some of that still. I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I'm very, very overstimulated by the defense attorney. It's terrible. I know. I gotta allow myself to not be so affected, I guess, when this is what I've listened to stuff, but I guess when it's different when I'm watching it on TV versus having these people in my ear because I'm listening on a headset. So I got very overstimulated yesterday. I could never be a defense attorney, that's for sure. I have a different kind of respect for them, I guess, if you will. But with this hearing, this motion to delay, they've been trying so hard to delay. And if they can delay this hearing for March 5th, that will help them delay the next hearing, the murder trial hearing that's slated for September 22nd of this year. So if they can get this delayed for a couple of months, that's going to put the murder trial into the end of 2025, possibly in the beginning of 2026. The problem with that is they don't really have good reason. It's not like he has new counsel. He has the same lawyers he's had for the most part. They have all of the evidence. They're just trying really hard to save this guy that put his own nails in the coffin. Like, he just dug this giant hole that they're trying to fill, but it's almost like they get some more dirt in and he's throwing more dirt out. He was talking to his parents knowing he was on a recorded line, saying things that he shouldn't have been saying. And I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to point some fingers in Jen's direction, which in a sense worked, but also made him look even worse. For example, the quote from Stephan talking to his parents on that recorded phone call. I probably should review that too, about Maddie and Jen, though he didn't say their names, would, quote, ogle my body. Bro, you're talking about a 12-year-old. If that 12-year-old is ogling your body, that's super concerning. And it's not even like he was particularly fit, not that that would make it any better, but it's not as if he's particularly fit because he's a bodybuilder. Like, Jen says he doesn't like going to the beach because he thinks he has a, quote, flabby body or whatever. But to say that she was ogling him, that they would ogle his body, feels gross. When I first heard that, like, I involuntarily shuddered because she was a 12-year-old. You're talking about a 12-year-old ogling your body because, she'd only been 13 for a few days. And when he saw her as a fresh 13-year-old, he hadn't seen her in at least a month or so. So it's not like she was ogling his body even as a 13-year-old, which again doesn't make it any better. But like that could be his argument. Well, She was a teenager then. Dude, this little girl was not ogling your body in the way that you think she was. And the only reason she might have been is because you effing groomed her, you disgusting pile of human excrement. Like, the guy is so disgusting, and he doesn't help the case. It doesn't help that he willingly gave over his phone. It doesn't help that while being watched, he drove all the way down to where his parents lived to ditch that external drive. It doesn't help that he had over 35,000 CSAM on his external drive. That doesn't count what they found on his phone. It doesn't help that he got a flat tire near where her body was located after both he and Jen. And this is why I am side-eyeing the hell out of Jen. And I'm trying really hard not to bully this woman. But she said it multiple times. And he said it too in that interrogation room he was in, that he did not know St. Cloud. He didn't know anybody in St. Cloud. He was unfamiliar with St. Cloud. But Jen had friends who lived there. Jen went to a reserve that was off of a lake with Maddie and her friend, never Stephan. She mentioned that reserve a couple of times in her police interviews. She mentions Harmony. She mentions Harmony. That was within 8 miles of where they found Maddie. And when you think of the size of Florida, 8 miles is nothing. 9 miles is nothing. When Jen is saying, well, he would have gone here, his parents live here, she's pointing the opposite direction of St. Cloud. She's like, well, the only places that he would go in that area are gaming shops. Okay, well, gaming shops aren't in the middle of nowhere. The only thing that's out near there are 2 horse ranches and like a couple of other random properties that have businesses. There's no gaming stores out there. And Stephan is terrible with directions. He did not have his phone because he intentionally, in my opinion, left that at the house. So it's just so crazy that Stephan doesn't know anything about St. Cloud, but that's where Maddie was found. Maddie was found almost in the middle. Like if you have I have a video where I show the mapping, but if you look at the mapping kind of like a triangle, and you put that triangle to where you have 2 sides facing the east and the point is facing west. Okay? And say Maddie's body is the west facing point. And you have Lake Lizzie and Harmony as the other 2 points of that triangle. And then you take that triangle and you shift it to where the 2 points are north and the main point is pointing south. That's where you have Lake Lizzie and where Jen had friends. All of that points to where Maddie was found. Stephan didn't know anyone in St. Cloud. He said that independently from her, and she said that independently from him. They had no communication at that time. She was being interviewed in one room. He was being interviewed in another. Both of them were both saying he didn't know anyone in St. Cloud. And she said, I am the only one who knows 2 people in St. Cloud. That is damning. And I'm really curious how they granted this woman total immunity, what she has to offer them for trial. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting because I have a feeling if she takes that stand, the defense, if they're worth their salt at all, are going to annihilate that woman. Unless they can get some pretty strong motions in limine to silence specifics according to what Jen would know, and unless Jen is so strong to say, I can't disclose, or I can't discuss, or I plead the fifth, or whatever, which isn't going to make her look good. The defense is going to walk all over that woman because she had to have known what was going on. And I do not believe that she was responsible necessarily for Maddie's death, but I do believe she was responsible for covering up that crime. I do. Because why else St. Cloud? He's sitting there driving around SeaWorld area, which is the totally opposite direction, with Maddie in the car at about 7 something. He was picked up by a camera out there on the highway or whatever. Goes back to the house after disposing of Maddie's with household trash. He got rid of her book bag, one of her Crocs, didn't even have both, her laptop for school, and other miscellaneous items. He took that and dropped it in a trash compactor. Thankfully, it didn't crush it. Went back to the house with Maddie in the trunk and spoke with Jen for at least an hour. He was already there when she got there after having her blood work appointment. That was at 10:20. She said she got back close to 11:30. They sat around and chatted for at least an hour. Chatted. He left to go to a gaming store, according to both of them. And then she kept saying, "Oh, I could tell you where so you can surveillance it." Like, lady, you're crazy. And Maddie would have been still in the trunk. Angelica leaves for work. Maddie might have still been in the trunk. Like, this is gross. And I don't believe they were just chit-chatting. I believe he didn't know where to take Maddie. He didn't know what to do. He was probably panicking, and she probably told him she wanted to live in the woods. And he was probably trying to find Lake Lizzie, but because he's an idiot, couldn't. He was probably trying to find Harmony, but because he's an idiot, couldn't. So he was on that tree road, that whatever road that's called. My brain isn't remembering it. But he was on that road, and that's where she was found. So I think he was confused at not where either place was, and that was where he put her. Because he's not familiar with the area. Jen is. I could be completely wrong. I could be way off the mark here, but that's my suspicion. I firmly believe that she told him where to take her because he was clueless. Otherwise, why wouldn't he have taken her the hour and a half down to where his parents are? They have rural areas too down there. They have wooded areas too. And when she says things like, "Well, that's suspicious as fuck," I want to punch her. Because, like, lady, that makes you sound suspicious. Because you're just saying whatever you think the law enforcement officers want you to say. But there's no way you're that clueless. There's no way you're that non-responsive and non-reactive. And we know it's not her meds. Because when Officer Kyle mentions the date and she realizes that her birthday is the next day, she starts bawling uncontrollably. Worst birthday ever, which is exactly what Stephan said in that audio with his parents at his birthday. Like, both of them can cry me a river. Both of them, worst birthdays ever. Really? I would say that Maddie won that competition. She had the worst birthday ever because her birthday, her mother didn't even recognize, didn't do anything for her, didn't take her to any special breakfast, didn't make a special breakfast for her, didn't buy her anything for her birthday, probably barely even acknowledged her birthday because Maddie was upset about it. Couldn't make sure to take the day off of work. She was just training. She could have said, "Hey, in the hiring process, yes, I'd love to work for you, but I can't work this day because that's my daughter's birthday party." The birthday party was already planned before she started her job. She said that. She didn't prioritize Maddie at all. Whether she is part of Maddie's death or not, that woman did not help Maddie at all. She was not there for Maddie because she was too deep in her own self to care or be bothered to buy her daughter a birthday gift or be there for her birthday party or celebrate her in any way. It's sad. And then right after her birthday, she's dead. So you want to talk about worst birthdays ever? Both of them can eat crap because that's ridiculous for either one of them. But yeah, she was fine sobbing then. When they talk about planning a funeral, oh, something Jen would have to do. It's not watching old movies and sleeping. Bald about that. She was able to respond to things that affected her or were about her. When it looked like she was being cheated on, she could cry. But then when confronted about CSAM, it was, I thought I knew about the sex stuff, she calls it. The sex stuff. I know about the sex stuff, but I didn't think he would do anything evil. I know about the sex stuff, but I didn't think he would do anything evil. He is 37 years old with your little girl. And you didn't think the sex stuff was evil? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you as a person to think, I now have information that my ex-boyfriend, because they were not together at the time, had been abusing my child since she was 8 years old, sexually abusing her since she was 8 years old. That's not evil? Even if that wasn't her intention, that's exactly how that sounds. That wasn't evil. I know about the sex stuff. I just didn't think he would do anything evil. And she got immunity. They gave her immunity. She, at this point, isn't being charged with a crime. And I think that is gross. What is wrong with the state of Florida where they are giving this woman a pass? She better have some pretty damning evidence to go against Stephan that exonerates her, because she is going to be one of the most hated women right up there with Casey Anthony, if she's not already. Because I am floored that they gave that woman immunity. Again, I'm not saying she killed Maddie. I don't think she did. I have suspicions. I don't think she did. The self-defense that were found were on Stephan only. Maddie did fight him. She had DNA under her nails. A lot of that evidence is redacted right now. So she did fight back. She was strangled. She wasn't overdosed. She didn't sustain a fall. She was strangled. Her hyoid bone was broken or dislodged, which can only happen during strangulation. And she had DNA under her nails. She had marks on her that were consistent with a struggle, which is horrible. I don't think Jen was there for that. I think they were arguing, because apparently there was a lot of arguments that the roommate, Natalie, felt important to have her TV on, quote, really loud to drown out the arguments that were probably quite frequent. I believe there was an argument, and Jen was like, I want to go to bed. You two go upstairs, Stephan. I can't deal with her anymore. And I think that's what happened. I don't think Stephan wanted Maddie dead, because as disgusting as it is, he was in love with her. He cried over her death. When they were doing those television interviews and Jen was like moving her leg constantly, and that was annoying, and it's a nervous tick thing. Is she nervous because she doesn't know where her daughter is, or is she nervous because she doesn't want to get caught? Okay? Questions. And she looks at Stephan and says, do you want to do an interview? And he's a mess. He's been crying. He looks broken. He's devastated. He's barely able to get words out because he knows Maddie is dead. He knows they're not looking for her. He's on medication too for depression and anxiety and all of the other things that Jen is on. He was a mess when it came to Maddie. Here's her mother. Like, anytime there's potential guilt in her direction, she's upset, she's sad. Now, by the time they talk to her again in April, a month later, she seems genuinely upset at points. But, I mean, it's kind of sad because Maddie was all she had. She didn't have any other children. And there is always going to be some sadness there. Unless you're a complete sociopath and you have no feelings for other people, you know, that's not surprising to me that she would be sad. She lost the only person in her life that, you know, she had with her every day, for the most part, other than when Maddie went and spent time with her dad in Texas and staying the night at her grandma's. But Maddie was a constant person in her life that's now gone. She's never going to brush her hair again. She's never going to take an hour-long shower again. You're never going to sing to Taylor Swift in the car with her again. That's sad. And anyone would be sad about that unless they're completely devoid of any kind of bond with another human. And so far, it doesn't seem like that is Jen. She cried more over her severed friendship with Stephan because he was, quote, her best friend. Figure that one out. She was sadder over Stephan, whom she continued to protect, than her own daughter. She's shown images of Maddie sleeping and his penis in her mouth. She sees these images, wants them to zoom out so she could see the whole picture for some reason, as if what she saw wasn't enough. Then immediately after this conversation, tells Chris, I think you need to get Stephan a lawyer. I would need the lawyer because I would have my hands around his neck and they would have to pry me off of him. I would want that mother dead if I saw those images. I would be running through that building, screaming his name and confronting him if I saw those images. Not Jen, you better get him a lawyer. And that woman was granted immunity. And I'm just like, what the hell, Florida? What the hell? If I were his lawyers, that would be my argument. Sorry, excuse me. If I were Jen or Stephan's lawyers, I would be pissed as hell. You gave this woman immunity. She is a potential accomplice to crimes, and you gave her immunity. Why aren't they arguing that? I would. It's not going to get Stephan out of anything, but it's going to hold her accountable. I always had a rule they couldn't sleep together. What could... I always had a rule. And she mentioned I was worried about a Woody Allen situation where the stepdaughter or daughter falls in love with the stepdad and she turns 18 and they run off together. Why would that be a concern, Jen, if you knew nothing, Jen? Why would that be something you felt the need to tell not one, but two, but three members of law enforcement? What? What parent is like, oh, I always had a rule that they couldn't sleep in the same bed alone together? Dude, what? That's not her dad. He's your boyfriend. And at that point, ex-boyfriend. Because they broke up around the time he lost his job and it came out that he cheated and all this other stuff, and they broke up. He was in that bedroom for another several months after their breakup because they didn't want to tell Maddie they were broken up before Stephan moved upstairs. And that's when the sleepovers started. But they weren't all the time, just sometimes. I blows my mind, but I didn't want to be on here for more than a half an hour. I'm on 49 minutes. So I'm going to take a break, going to do some stuff, gotta do a little bit of schoolwork with my son, and then I'm going to come back and get ready. I don't know if I'm going to cover anything else today. I might dig into some of Stephan's phone calls with his parents, but court is at 2. So I will definitely be around for that. Thank you, and please like, subscribe, share, help me build my platform. I know